Jessica Holsapple with SCG Consulting Group, and this is the Systems Culture Growth Podcast. Today I'm joined by my friend and guest, Jacob Saldana, multiple fitness studio owner and owner of multiple cafes, Fit Bar, Space Bar, and the Bar Collective, which we'll talk a little bit about. Jacob, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Always great to catch up, and I'm blessed with actually getting a video here, so we get to see each other as well.
Yeah, and you're not in the cafe, so you're in a quiet space, not juicers going around you and people asking you questions, so it's nice. We don't get this opportunity very often.
Yeah, and been chipping away at that, making a goal, and right now it's more crucial than ever to be able to do this.
I appreciate it. So before we get started, a little icebreaker. If I could play music, what would your walkout song be? If I was introducing you, you had a song that pumped you up, what would that be?
Oh, wow. I'm not even a music guy. But anything, I think at this point right now that allows me to walk out in slow motion. I'm picturing more of the visual here. I want explosions in the background. So probably something dramatic. I can't give you a specific song. Whatever that means for you, and that you can picture me with this slow motion explosions happening, but looking like I'm in complete control, even though it's an absolute shit show. Hopefully I can cuss because you know it's coming. But yeah, I'll paint that picture for you.
I love it. If something came in my head of like drums in the background, just slowly, steadily going. And then, yes, exactly. That would be the word I was looking for.
So if there's anyone out there that makes music and you're picturing that, I need a new song for a new podcast. So please bring that. That'd be amazing.
That'd be awesome. We could remix this episode too and have like a little background music that is not copyrighted.
Beautiful.
For
Let's
YouTube.
Do it. Let's do it.
I want to talk about how we met. But before, I noticed in the introduction a theme in the naming of your businesses: Fit Bar, Space Bar, Barcode Collective. What is the theme behind the word bar?
I just really like when things tie together. I don't know if this is the lateral thinking, but with all of our businesses, there's always been some level of integration with them and like creating the next one to kind of fill in some holes of the previous ones. So in each one of those, there's a bit of an acronym. So we started Fit Bar, I guess, literally as it describes. It's a fit bar. We do smoothies, coffee, some health conscious acai bowls and whatnot. And then running with that came the Space Bar. And with that being kind of an extension of the Fit Bar, I really wanted to kind of play on that theme. And sometimes it creates a little bit of a harder decision to come up with a name, but this one seemed to flow a little bit. It's a wellness center that we're intending for people to come and create space. Specifically create space to breathe, adapt, and recover. So the bar fits in perfectly within that. And at that location, it's actually connected to a Fit Bar. So that connection there. And barcode is a different acronym, but it's bar. And then the code is the courage to optimize and develop your essence. And again, kind of integrated within our thought processes behind our businesses. And that our driving factor in doing really any of them is testing ourselves as people and using the businesses as the kind of the tool to force growth. So having courage to I guess step into that uncomfortable role, and then being aware enough to see where we're falling short and optimizing as we develop ultimately who we are as people, as brothers, as fathers, as friends, and just who we are, like kind of a bit on a spiritual level as we bring it all into to guide us through this life and this journey.
Yeah. You touched on a lot of things that are deep values for me, and just a few that come off my head, and maybe even mention a couple of things that I know about your business that didn't come up in that introduction. Is you talked about testing yourself as people and kind of leaning into the discomfort, holding yourself accountable by having a tool and a space to kind of create that accountability for yourself, and forcing growth. And one of the other things that I know very at a deep level is one of your values, which has also been made very clear by the experience of walking into any of your businesses, is community. And Spacebar, like holding the space, but FitBar is a space for that community, and to have real authentic connections over a smoothie, over an acai bowl, over a coffee is something that I think a lot of people are craving right now. And there are people out there that might not know they're craving it. Maybe they don't have the language around it, or are actively pursuing that growth and discomfort like you are, or actively out there looking for community. But there's a human need for belonging in all of us. And you are a conscious entrepreneur that is creating that opportunity for people and opportunity for belonging. So I recognize that and appreciate you for that. And I know that's meant a lot to you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think a lot of times we often create what we want for ourselves, and in doing so, it's been kind of almost a challenge, and almost moments of resentment for me, and where I don't necessarily feel part of any real community myself. So like I want to create that, and then sometimes when it is created, I find myself as being the facilitator of that community, but not necessarily part of the community, which sometimes leads to the resentment of like, I want some of that. I want that for myself. So a lot of the work that I've been doing lately is trying to find some of that for myself without strategy behind it necessarily, without, just as it being a novelty in and of itself, rather than I'm doing this community for others to connect, but yet me as the business owner, knowing that it's a way to also create a sustainable business that I think if I wasn't myself and didn't have my own issues, I would really be able to benefit from being a part of those communities. But since I'm so in my head all the time and seeing what's going wrong, I feel like I maybe have missed out on that. That doesn't so the intention was always to build a community that I could be a part of. In doing so, I recognize, damn, that's not as easy as it is, because I I I just got so much shit going on in my head, you know what I mean, that it's hard to do that. So very important, I think, aspects of our businesses, and knowing that that's a challenge, that not relying on the communities that I build to necessarily be my own personal communities, and seeking that out so I can fill my own damn cup too,
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So the thing that really stood out to me is you set out to start these businesses to fill an opportunity in the market that you didn't see for yourself. And in turn, these turned into businesses, which you have to operate and run. And like you said, you're building these groups and communities, but then you've taken the responsibility of facilitating that, which takes you out of a passive kind of role and into the responsibility of holding space for other people versus yourself. So I think that's really deep, and maybe people haven't looked at it like that before, other business owners. But I don't necessarily think the story is unique, as far as there are people that open restaurants because they want to bring their community together, or a bar, and they're passionate about food and they want to hold this space. And then the business itself gets a hold of them. And now it's no longer fun to go sit at your, pizza restaurant or whatever the case might be and have this community, because you're having to jump behind the register or go cook or wash dishes, which I know a lot of restaurant owners do. So yeah. Do you have anything else to kind of share about, your intention versus the reality of now being in ownership?
If you're interested in becoming an entrepreneur, or you have some passion behind something, that, you're doing your part to try to find like an authentic, open discussion around that, because a lot of the, we'll go into trying to open something with some models that we're using to shape this vision for ourselves, and you don't know what everyone's situation is. So if you're getting clear on your situation and you're asking people like the truth and the reality behind some of these things, you can maybe set better expectations. For me, not having any real models around you know entrepreneurship or what that looks like, I'm getting it maybe from TV or from magazines or from whatever it might be, nowadays social media and Instagram, and the image that's projected out there is, oh wow, look at that business owner, so engulfed in that community, and he's having such a blast in those workouts with those people, and that's like the model that you're shaping it. But his scenario, you don't know this, but his scenario could have been that he had all the capital in the world, that he made all this money somewhere else. So there's all this money coming in that allows him to truly enjoy that. But if your
Mm.
situation is like, damn, I'm pulling this together, I'm shoestrapping this, I'm going to figure out how to make this happen, and you think that you're not going to have another level of stress that's going to maybe pull you out of being able to be fully present, that's a reality too. And just understanding that shouldn't necessarily deter you, but trying to figure out and going into these with like realistic expectations and a wide variety of models to shape your particular situation after, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you and I have known each other for a while, and we always tend to go deep, and we can literally talk for hours. I want to zoom out just a little bit and give people perspective of the scope and breadth of your experience as an entrepreneur. So you've been doing this for over a decade. Like I said, you've owned multiple fitness studios, multiple locations of your cafe. You have Space Bar, and you're a branding and marketing genius or mind. So you're always expanding. So I think like the scope of your entrepreneurship in a relatively short amount of time is unique. So you had mentioned you hadn't had a model around entrepreneurship. You went to your heart, your gut, and kind of chased that. So what are the pros and cons of growing so quickly and kind of trusting your gut and your heart? What's been some of the
Yeah.
lessons and challenges around that?
As I reflect upon it right now, like, as somebody who doesn't necessarily give themselves a lot of credit of what they've accomplished, I do try to spend a lot of time in thinking about, what I was doing, say 11, 12 years ago versus now, and how different things are. So the pros of doing everything is, I would say, building confidence and building trust in that I am, a powerful, being that has agency and control over the choices that I make, and I'm grateful for that. Um, and some of the cons, I would say, is, growing too fast and not learning fully from your mistakes in order to not replicate the mistakes, becomes a challenge. And, for me personally, as the businesses are extensions of like who I am as an individual, I mean, I think if we were to try to, I don't know what you think of when you hear the word entrepreneurship. I know it's closely related to businessman or businesswoman or business being, whatever it is right now. Um, but for me, it's an extension of the journey of the life that I'm on. It's another challenge for me to overcome and see what I'm made of. So entrepreneurship is deeper than making money. It, it's something I wrestle with because it's very needed largely in this space to do the things that you want to do, but it's not what's going to help shape me into the person that I ultimately want to become. It's a piece of the puzzle, and it's part of the challenges that is going to allow me to grow, and rewrite some of the narratives or stories that I have around finances or wealth. But it's not the reason why, I'm in these businesses. So trying to recognize my own issues from a personality standpoint, from a conditioning standpoint, and navigate these businesses with the intention of overcoming some of those challenges is in part why there are so many businesses. And trying to take a step back, like especially in this moment where you're coming out of the pandemic and you're like, holy shit, we went into this super over leveraged, me in particular. So a little background is, I'm partnered with my brothers and one of my brother's girlfriend, bless Cynthia. So there's a group of us, but they're all up in Seattle. I'm in California. And my personality and the way that I am, the way that I like to navigate is to create. I love that building phase of like having this idea and then creating it and making it a reality. But when I'm one person down here and I created or I started these things, and then you get smacked with something that is completely out of your control, that is largely the downside of growing too fast without, say, having the cushion to fall back on. And granted, there's no way to really plan for that scenario with COVID. So I don't know who would have had any cushion to fall back on as I say a small business. Like you can't really plan that. And definitely the way my personality is of go, go, go. And using like the North Star as being, oh, you're testing yourself. You're getting through these challenges. You're problem solving, being the metric of success largely for me, and not being, oh, the amount of money in the bank being the thing of success for me. I'm going to kind of even discredit and not necessarily worry about what's in the bank, because my metric is over here getting uncomfortable and creating, right? So had I had a different personality, then it probably would have been a different scenario. But that for me is a con. And again, something that I'm working on and trying to address with when I overstep with that wanting to do more, and honing that in while still appreciating and being grateful for that inherent trait of mine that is a strength. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I would say those would be some of the cons as far as like growing too fast. But if you stack that up against what are you made of, what are you going to do in this scenario, then that shit's a pro, I guess, because
Absolutely.
Over the past year, that definitely has been tested for sure.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about you, Jacob, is your honesty and rawness and realness about this isn't for the faint of heart, right? Like,
it's true.
Your go, go, go driver nature has created a lot of opportunity out of nothing, right? You've been able to employ people. You've been able to create community. You've been able to give people experiences. And I haven't forgot about sharing our story about how we connected. So I'll give a little background about that. So was it 2018 when you opened Fit Bar Sunset Beach?
It was, 2018. I think it was that January.
Yeah. So when I lived in LA, I would, at the time I was living, I think in Hollywood or West Hollywood. And every weekend I would try to just like go see the beach, get in my car and drive along the coast. And I saw a big banner that said like healthy cafe or something like that. And I was like, all right. And it's at the beach. I got to stop here. And when I walked in, the open air space was open, bright, light, and there was activity going on and conversations being had and friendly faces and smiling and laughter. And I was like, all right, this is a good spot. And I went to your, like the reach in, and it had all the products I already buy, right? So like On It products, or I'm someone that looks at labels, and I was like, wow, I have to actually make a choice here versus most places I go. I'm like, okay, what can I have versus I can have all of that, or I should say choose to put in my body ingredients that I've already kind of done some research on. And I remember having an experience with Andrew, your brother, who was just like, what questions do you have about the products, and he was super knowledgeable, helped me make a decision, wasn't trying to sell me on anything. And between that and just like the vibes that were in the cafe, I was like, all right, I'm going to find a way to come here every other weekend or as much as possible. And I was really excited about, finding a new spot and maybe having like a place I could go and relax and read or work on the weekends. And it had to be like a month, maybe 2 months later. I'm in Austin for a conference called Paleo FX, which is like a nutrition conference. And I wanted to check out a gym called On It, which is also known for like healthy lifestyle optimization and things like that, which I'm totally into. And saw Jacob and his brother and his business partner there. And I was like, all right, these guys do have shared the same values. Like we're all there for the same conference. We're all at the same location. And I've already been to your location. So meeting people that share values of like optimizing your life and things like that was I think is rare, and I hold on to those friendships. So I'm happy we found each other.
Well, thank you for sharing that again, because, again, like I forget about some of these experiences, like unfortunately human nature is to hang on to the negative a lot of the times, right? So it's like I don't take enough time to really sit with and receive like the positive things that are happening. And it feels great, it feels great to hear that story and to know that, you're still, in my life. And that's really what this is all about. And if I could only tap into that more frequently, I think that's a lot of more of a healthier fuel to move forward on, you know what I mean, as a motivating factor. So thank you for the reminder.
Yeah. But you also said something earlier when you were describing your challenges with entrepreneurship and the pros and cons of your personality. One thing you talked about is, that you have control over your choices. And I know people like you that are go drivers, and I share a lot of the same qualities. There's a lot of people in our lives that view that as risk, and they like to project their values of, hey, maybe you should slow down. Maybe you should take care of yourself. Maybe you should, not make that choice. And my experience with that has been, like you said, all these other benefits that come along. And when we receive information like that, at least my experience is like kind of treating me like a victim, right? Like, oh, like, do you feel bad for me for making these choices, which I know my reasoning behind, right? It's tapping into something deeper in myself to create something in the world that didn't exist, to create an impact. So I'm kind of I'm curious to ask you, like you had mentioned, you have control over yourself, you trust yourself, you know that all these challenges that you've navigated have been conscious decisions at some point. So do you view yourself like a warrior or a victim of circumstance when things happen to you? Or is there a archetype or a character that you embody to overcome all these challenges that naturally come your way when you're doing new things?
I think, it's a mixture of both. I often talk about how my day is almost a 24-hour cycle of a full, like, manic, like I wake up with victim mentality of like, God damn, like, why me? Why these struggles? Why these challenges? And then as I put my feet on the floor and I get out of bed, the warrior comes out of me. And I remember, I tap into, because this isn't inherently natural to me, and I don't think any of this is, but when you start reflecting upon, all that's going on, your some of your conditioning and all of that, then that's when that control of choice comes in. It's not a natural thing. So there's like there's models around how to do that, right? So it's like some of the first things is just telling myself that I made these decisions. I'm the challenges that I'm facing. No one put them upon me, but but I created these challenges, and reminding myself why I created these challenges to test myself to see what I'm made of. So I would probably say the most natural feeling is victim mentality, but I know better than to stay in that. And that happens in relationships, that happens in traffic, that happens in all sorts of scenarios. And where, now at this stage of playing this game, I know that does sure as hell does not serve me. So when I slide into that to quickly get out of it, using some of the tools that I've acquired along the way. And most of that is through, you know, just being curious and courageous to working on the things that I know aren't serving me. Because if I ever stayed in those states of mind, nothing would have ever been created. So it's not. I think that I'm wired one specific way, and I think that's where the power comes in. That I'm no different than anybody else. It's just that I've I'm really conscious of like what I'm doing, and in being conscious of what I'm doing, there's a kind of an admittance to knowing that the majority of that time is subconscious still. You know what I mean? And not thinking that I have full agency and that I have full control over my world, because I don't. I give a lot of respect to traumas that I don't even know that I went through, and you know the environment that I grew up in, and the way that I was raised, and you know the relationships that I had in high school, the way that I showed up with my brothers, the way that my brothers showed up with me in relationships, and seeing how those dictate personal relationships that I'm in now, and not being, and I'm aware of those things, right? So it's like, I think people, when they hear, oh, growth mindset, have a sense of agency, you're going to play yourself if you think that you're in complete control. You're sure as hell not. There's a lot of things that are deeply rooted within you that you think you're making a decision consciously, but nah, you're just going through another pattern of, your past or whatever it might be. Um, so, so yeah, I don't feel like I'm any particular one type of way. It's just like this very engaged process of trying to be conscious when I can, trying to be the warrior when I need to be, and also, not not being the warrior when I need to be. I think the same thing for you is like that. When I share kind of the challenges that I'm going through, people, yeah, often will say you need to slow down, but they don't necessarily know that the stress. Again, if I go back to like testing myself and seeing what I'm made of, the stress is a choice. The stress is what motivates me. So for you to tell me to not stress myself, you're telling me not to pursue the best version of myself. You know what I mean? And yes, there's a time and a place. Like, and in that same thought process, me chilling and not doing a damn thing, that's twice as much stress. And that's why I'm not choosing that. But that is what I probably need to do. And you're probably right, but don't get it twisted to think that I'm going to not be stressing myself by forcing myself to stay home and read a book and go for a walk. You're basically telling me, hey, you're not stressed, double stress yourself, because yes, you're right. That's where I'll probably benefit the most from, but don't think it's a day off. That's double
Yeah.
stress.
I so appreciate what you just shared, because what I've been thinking a lot about is, you and I have we have shared values, and we have a lot of similar characteristics in that we could literally talk about business and entrepreneurship 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and never get bored, because we can go to all these different depths of who we are as people when we show up working in business, or how do our experiences shape how we operate? How do our inherent inclinations to move towards things shape how we do things? And we also have kind of a different, set of habits, right? So you shared that if you were to sit still, that would give you double the stress, right? Because you're living passionately and that energy is what charges you to keep moving forward. And my innate experience is if we don't kind of slow down and put everything together and have it organized, that creates chaos for me, right? So I appreciate you sharing that because I think there's a time for us to own who we are and then there's a time for us to flex, right? Because we're going to have to work with people that share the opposite qualities or complement our opposites. So although with what you shared, I could go a million different directions, I want to ask you in business, working with maybe your partners and people that work for you, how do personality differences complement you or create challenges of people that might want to slow down while you're wanting to speed up, or any other differences that you've observed or experienced?
I think everyone at this point kind of appreciates how I do like to find solutions but again, I do it in a fast way. There's solutions all over the way. Like there's act now and then kind of fix the problems that you just created, but hopefully there's less of them. And then there's a slow down approach. So like I really at this point know that I need to balance that. So we're all, I think at this point trying to find where our strengths are. And we've almost had a little bit of a separation over this past COVID time because, although in a time where we probably need to come together and pull our resources of who we are as individuals and how we can help support each other, we've kind of went into managing our own situation the best that we can because it's hard work to work together and find this collective situation, so an easier solution was almost to be like, all right, let me just go be a little like shell and try to just keep it together down here the best that I can. So that's kind of, at least in the partnership of things, how things have kind of gone. And, I think they also have recognized that too, in where, it's probably a lot of work to try to rally me in and force this slowdown for me and to just sit back and like look at the numbers of things and like making these very rational decisions, because that would be a lot of hard work for me when I'm barely holding it together, and again, we're having this conversation coming out of COVID where there's a lot of challenges. So, that's a true statement. And it's like, man, you got to recognize what, when you can actually carry more stress. And I think that wasn't necessarily a moment for me to try to learn that lesson. That was a moment for me to like go into what I know how to do and just muscle it and not slow down, just like do my best to show up, even though it probably wasn't the most efficient way to go about things, but it was what I knew. And that's in regards to that. But as far as like personalities and working with employees and trying to build a team around, I know I bring to the table, and I'll always bring back like who I am as a person, because that's so deeply rooted in this. So some of the challenges is within that is trying to kind of overcompensate and baby people a little bit too much. So that's been a challenge for me in being somebody who likes to be a people pleaser and likes to be accepted, and has literally taken on multiple personas and looks in order to fit into whatever scenario that I'm in, not to necessarily blend in, but to fit in and take over that, you know what I mean? So that wasn't like a defense mechanism for me to like, oh, don't be seen. No, I'm going to blend in here. I'm going to run the show. I'm one of you, and I'm also the leader now of this thing. And yes, I'm wearing a Abercrombie and Fitch polo now, and I'm in whatever it had to be in that moment, right?
Yeah. I cannot picture you in Abercrombie.
Abercrombie
I need to see those.
Popped.
I need to see those pictures.
Maybe the occasional two like polo shirts layered with two
Yes.
pop collars.
Yes, we are the same age. I can tell because that
Yeah,
was definitely a trend.
yeah, for sure. So like those are the extremes that I'd go to be accepted and viewed as somebody relevant.
Mm,
So now how that shows up in where it's like I need to be disliked at times in order to delegate a certain thing and make somebody do something that they don't want to do to force growth amongst them to be able to step
mm,
into a role that I ultimately need them to be in to make my life easier and the business operate better is a big challenge for me. Really big challenge because by doing so, I'm directly threatening that mindset of like, or that threatening them liking me and
yeah.
therefore, you know, um, showing up for me because that's how I've had people show up for me in the past is,
Yeah.
I'm going to make you fall in love with me and and that's how I know you're going to be there for me. But that doesn't
Mm,
work in this world. It doesn't work
yeah.
that way. Um,
Yeah. No, I
so
appreciate
trying,
you sharing that. I don't think this is not a unique experience that I've observed. Entrepreneurs going in and um, kind of befriending their team and staff because you care. But really, what they need is a sense of leadership to, force them into their best versions of their self, force them to grow, force them to feel uncomfortable in places and not allow them to settle back into their own circumstances. Because what you're working towards is something greater than an individual, right? You're creating a business and a community and a team that is greater than the individual. It's greater than yourself. It's greater than any person that works for you. And so how do you take all those unique personalities and drive them into a team without sacrificing self in the meantime, right? And you and I have had a lot of conversations about how do you create a buffer between you as a business owner and your team. And again, like when you care, but now you have, how many employees do you have, Jacob?
I can't even tell you. I mean,
A couple,
uh,
over
yeah, I mean,
20, right?
yeah, for sure, for
So,
sure.
yeah. So getting
And
to
I
know
think,
everyone individually and caring about their needs when you mentioned that you're in survival mode sometimes at any given time. It's your personal survival mechanisms that are keeping you afloat. It's your business that you're trying to survive through,
yeah.
downfalls. So, yeah.
Yeah, and and recognizing that like very strong desire to want to be like
Mm,
the further you remove yourself, the more rational you can be and the less emotional you can be. So like for me, and that's why I'm sitting, in this shared workspace right now because I know the pain has become so much that I know I need to do these things and where naturally I want to step in and I want to, if there's scarcity around finances or covering payroll, like naturally I want to go and work a shift. And by doing that and by being there, I'm then getting closer, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but for me it is a bad thing to get close and be alongside everybody because my my things are going to then be brought into those relationships. But if I can pull back, I'm going to look back and I'm going to look at things more rationally. I'm going to be able to look at the numbers. I'm going to be able to, you know, ha- be more performance oriented on any particular tasks and whether or not someone's accomplishing their goals. And I'm not going to have my emotional things necessarily influence that as much. I mean, because it's not the goal isn't to not be emotionally invested or empathetic to anybody's situation, but when that is inherently overpowering for you as an individual, it becomes a problem. Even in regards to letting people go when they don't perform. So, something that I wouldn't have done had I didn't remove myself would be I get a text message about, people starting to show up late, and it becoming a culture of everyone is showing up 5 or 10 minutes late. Granted, we're not necessarily open at this particular time, but your shift starts at say 7:30. You're showing up at 7:35. You've been asked to show up on time, right? And if I'm there, I'll hop in and again, I'll be like, hey, oh, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Because I was there to start getting the coffee ready or whatever the task might have been. No, don't even worry about it. Not even give them a conversation because, I'm going to probably be working alongside them, and there's no point in having any kind of uncomfortable conversation or whatever. I'm not going to do that. However, when I've removed myself and now I'm hearing that this culture is taking over, I can step back. I can send a group message, very clear, not giving a shit on whether or not I'm being liked, because I'm not going to be there to deal with that side eye or whatever it might be. It might still be happening, but I'm not there to internalize it as much. So, send out a group text message of like, hey guys, like, I don't think this necessary to have a meeting around something as obvious of showing up on time, but it's time that I start holding people to the standard that I hold myself, and I can only do that when I'm remote. So what I've been hearing and what I've been witnessing is people showing up late. This is something very simple. So, unfortunately, the next person that shows up late is going to have to be let go as per, our employee handbook or our expectations and whatnot. So, next day, probably one of my favorites, the person that I really connect with because she's a little hustler and she does a lot of the things that I see in myself, and I really like her. Charismatic, charming, and all these things. So shows up late. And I would never have let her go had I not been able to pull myself back. But boom, unfortunately on the chopping block, and had to do that. And it gave me space to step into the leader that I needed to be, and that's just like a very real example of what that looks like. And it, of course, had that conversation in person. Her being like me definitely challenged me and pushed back on me letting her go. But I was able to, stick to that and be disliked heavily in that moment. But ultimately, a few days later, she was able to reflect upon it and definitely respected me even more for doing that. And as simple as that might sound for others, and depending on what your business is like that was a huge challenge for me,
Yeah. No, I so appreciate you sharing that. And I know we're coming up against time. With your permission, I'd like to wrap some of those things you set up in a little bit of a neat bow. So one thing that you had shared was that the pain that you experience from all these kind of cumulative headaches, right? These one person is late and then all of a sudden 10 people are late and it's just eating at you. You decided that pain got, so intense, if you will, that you decided to make a conscious choice of what do I need to do to stop this? And you hold yourself to a particular standard, which you decided consciously to say, I need to step in and hold everyone else to the same standard. And you checked in with yourself to say, how do I do that? Knowing all of my personality traits and knowing that this is not easy for me as a person, but these people need leadership clearly. And at the end of the day, this is my business. I need to take ownership over it. Right. So I applaud you for that, because it's not an easy decision to make, but you decided to take that part of the control and the power that you have as a business operator. And if we're going to take it a little deeper and share about, our personalities and how we were raised, which we have some similarities because we're the youngest. You have a bigger family than I do, but there's something about like being the baby sister, the baby brother, that we're always kind of fighting for our place and attention and things like that. But I've been reflecting a lot of, if we sought out structure in our lives, or we rebelled because we didn't receive that, then, those are all things that, I'll speak for myself, but you're trying to you're craving that, right? You're craving like a parental guidance or even a mentor or someone that you can look up to kind of help shape and shift you away from danger. And to me, that's what leadership is. So when some of these rebellious acts of showing up 10 minutes late and going, oh, well, there's no one here to really check me in, or I don't really get in trouble when I'm late for 10 minutes. But as a business owner, that's all cumulative, right? If one person does it, then it creates a domino effect. And what I've observed is that people genuinely crave leadership. And like you said, especially when you make tough decisions, they respect you even more for it because you're holding the standard. And again, you're looking for the greater good and the team and the business as a whole. You're not, a slave per se to one individual who's kind of holding you hostage for your own business. So I just know how hard that is to zoom out, take ownership, take your power back, take your control back, and hold a standard and expect everyone to raise to the level of excellence that you expect yourself to. So I commend you for that. And I encourage you to keep on that, because I think what you will see, or what I've observed time and time again, is that people will rise with you. And then the other people who cannot will go away, which will only save you pain and heartache in the long run. So I know it's a constant battle between survival and doing what's best for yourself and your business. So applaud you on that. And I look forward to hearing how that goes for you as you stay on this track.
For sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I'll let you go, but do you have any words of wisdom for entrepreneurs, business owners out there, or aspiring entrepreneurs or business owners? I know we have our thoughts about the word entrepreneurship. So
I can only give advice based off of how I've navigated and operated. And for me, entrepreneurship is an extension of, this life that we have one crack at. And with that being said, wherever you are, whether you're 15 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, this life is long, to a certain extent. You get multiple cracks at it, and don't be afraid of failure. That failure is part of it. So, the only real way to fail is not learn from your mistakes, and just know that this process of entrepreneurship is treated as it is your life. And those conversations for me are the exact same. That if I wasn't stoked on who I was today, that tomorrow is a new opportunity to make the changes, to be the version of myself that I want to be. And same thing for your business. If things didn't go well in your business, that you can reflect upon that and make adjustments and create a better business. But don't get stuck in the darkness that you might be experiencing now, whether again, you need to let go of a business in order to move forward. I think that is a very real example for me right now, and where the goal for me, it isn't to come out of this COVID situation with all the businesses that I went into it. I'd probably be hurting still in 5 years or 10 years. Or do I sit back and let go of some things because I'm in a new season of my life and reflecting on what I'm trying to accomplish? And by letting go of some of these things is going to allow me to create a little bit more space and learn from the lessons that I've made. So in an example, it's like, okay, if say this Fit Bar location is taking so much energy from me and getting more rational, and it's not producing, because I do need to do work on looking at the numbers of the businesses and bringing in the profitability into more of a decision making and not just the feeling side of it. And if I'm thinking about, okay, so much energy going into this business and the profitability just isn't really there to match the energy.
Yep.
Let's close that. Let's close that location. Let's take the L in the short term for a chance at that W in the long term.
Yep.
And knowing that if we were to hang on and you're afraid of failing, you're not going to ultimately step into what you can become. You're going to be hanging on to the things. And that's whether that's the example of closing a business so that you can get straight and do something else that's going to better serve you, or you take the hard lesson of removing yourself so that you can get less emotional and have to let somebody go so you can establish more accountability for employees. Like all of that, that's a short term, what feels like a loss. Short term feels like more pain so that you can chip away at more, not necessarily pleasure or happiness, but more contentment and more satisfaction knowing that you made a change for what you felt was going to be the better. It doesn't always turn out to be better, and there's some I think wisdom in just focusing on the process or focusing on the choice and being less attached to the outcome. But that's always the intention. The intention is to then make improvements, but just focus on the process, focus on the choice that you have right then and there, and don't overthink the outcome because that's largely out of your control.
Yeah. And if there's anything people can take from this conversation, it's that entrepreneurship can feel lonely, and there's a lot of decisions you need to make independently of everyone around you. So it is so important to feel like there's a place for you to go and learn from other entrepreneurs and connect with them. So that being said, where can people connect with you, Jacob?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Cub_Saldana, Saldana. We did just launch a new podcast called The Warriors Collective. That is currently showing up on my Barcode Collective feed. So you can see some past episodes of the Barcode, and then also see some newer episodes of the Warrior Collective. And the Warriors Collective is really just a group of guys that are trying to navigate entrepreneurship and who they are as their own individuals and unpack that. So at this stage of what that podcast looks like, it's just a group of us literally just jumping on the mic and kind of just having a quick little emotional check-in on where we are and making sure that people know that that's okay, especially guys who might look a type of way, whether they're big ass dudes, tatted, face tats, or whatever it might be, that, there's a stigma there that needs to be broken, and we're ancestors in the making. And if like as far as my dad was trying to generate more wealth for his kids, so we didn't have to struggle like he did, I feel like it's my responsibility and other men who have been given some privilege in this world to then break some of the emotional barriers so that we don't pass those on to our young children, our young men that we're raising as well. So that's kind of the work that we're doing on that podcast. So definitely invite you to join us, and I hope to hear from many of you guys.
Yeah. And if you're in the Los Angeles, Orange County, or Pasadena area, go check out Fit Bar and Space Bar. And if you're in Renton and Seattle, in Washington, check Fit Bar out there too. You cannot go wrong with the food, coffee choices there. And if anything that Jacob said resonated with you, you can identify with any of those things. You want to hear some real raw conversations, check him out on Instagram. Or the Warrior podcast. Lots of great stuff to learn from Jacob and his community. So check him out there. This has been the Systems Culture Growth Podcast. I'm Jessica Holsapple, and if you like this, please subscribe. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can connect with me at systemsculturegrowth.com and visit all the social channels there. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Jacob. It's always good catching up with you.
No, thank you.